Today we are in Rittman, Ohio at the old B&O Railroad trestle that crosses the river Styx just east of the town. Ghost tales began to circulate back in 1899 when Dr. William Faber, who was the local coroner and former mayor of Orrville, Ohio, had an experience that he couldn't explain. Faber was riding home in his buggy with a friend around 11 p.m. when he heard the shrieking sound of a train, and he looked down the tracks and saw a fiery, sparking behemoth thundering down these tracks. What occurred next gave rise to Rittman's most famous tale of the supernatural, a tale of heroism and of tragedy, a ghostly tale. So if you're curious, let's take a walk through history. On dark nights, it's said that the doomed locomotive barrels down these tracks towards oblivion, behind a headlight and billowing smoke. It jumps the rails and vanishes down into this ravine, into the mist. But before it was a ghost story, it was a true tale of a brave man. Erie Railroad engineer Alexander Wallace Logan had worked on railroads since he was 19. Born in Scotland, Logan worked his way up from track construction to locomotive engineer, a post he held for 31 years. Logan had never had an accident in 3 decades. He was one of Erie's most experienced engineers and rode thousands of miles per year on the tracks. Logan did, however, feel his days were numbered and began telling co-workers that he knew he would meet his death on his engine. His premonition proved correct one fateful day in 1899. Around 7 a.m. on March 22nd, Logan was driving the Erie Limited No. 5 train west towards Chicago with 79 passengers. The coal-fed locomotive pulled a day car, a dining car, 2 passenger cars, and a sleeping car. The train was hurtling down these tracks at 60 miles an hour towards Rittman when something went horribly wrong. A drive rod snapped, and the locomotive began to veer out of control. Logan, the engineer, seeing what was happening, put on the air brakes and started to reverse the engines. But it wasn't enough. By the time they got to this bridge, he was completely out of control, and the locomotive had begun to derail. Byron Ward, who was the train's fireman, had just finished loading coal and was standing in the gangway behind the engine when he felt it start to go sideways. He kept his eyes on Logan with his hand on the emergency brake and thought he would jump as soon as Logan jumped. But Logan didn't jump. He kept his hand on the throttle with that determined grin, leaning out the side of the engine, trying to steer it to safety and save the lives of the passengers on board. The engine turned to the left, fell down the embankment, landing on its right side, pinning Logan between the boiler and the cab. Logan was killed instantly, but thanks to his efforts, all of the passenger cars remained upright. 6 people were hurt, but there were no other deaths. Ward praised Logan, saying, "With a man less cool than he, certainly more people would have died." Friends, relatives, and co-workers attended Wallace Logan's funeral at his home at 500 East Buchtel Avenue in Akron. The engineer was laid to rest here in the family plot at Glendale Cemetery. Or was he at rest? So what exactly did Dr. Faber witness on the night of October 1899? Well, his was the first recorded sighting of the phantom train. According to Dr. Faber, the train was enveloped in great clouds and dust and smoke, and huge flames of fire shot up in every direction, and immense volumes of steam made a terrific noise shot up from the engine, and the noise of creaking timbers and breaking iron bars was plainly heard. The coroner and his companion started immediately for the railroad, thinking that a frightful wreck had occurred. Imagine their surprise when they reached the bridge and found everything perfectly quiet. No sign of a wrecked train, and not even a ripple upon the placid surface of the river Styx. The next April, Rittman residents J.B. Ewing, Amos Goldner, and a man named Fielding were walking along the tracks at night when they too heard a whistle and saw a locomotive. They said the train derailed at the Styx Bridge and crashed into the river with shrieking passengers. When they ran to help, there was no train. The place was quiet as death, and although the three men possessed an average amount of courage, they crept away from the haunted place with cries of the passengers in their ears. Have you heard or seen anything that would be related to a phantom train?
Not until recently. I didn't know about the legend, the urban legend, but it reminded me of one or two times, because I live right by the train tracks. They literally shake my house when they come by. I'm so close. There were a couple of times where the horn sounded very weird, not traditional. I don't know how else to really describe it, but like it didn't sound like it was the same note as other horns, and it seemed like it echoed more. Like it, in hindsight, it had a haunting tone to it, but I'm sure that's because of the connotation of the story involved now.
Is there a specific time of day in which you heard that haunting whistle?
I don't remember what exact time it was, but it was nighttime, probably after like 10 p.m.
Can you describe the sound of the horn that you heard?
It sounded like one of the 7 trumpets sounding for the end of the world.
Perhaps there is no phantom train, though. Maybe all these stories are just the fabrications of drunken men on their way home. And even if there is no phantom train, what would you make of the list of friends and relatives of Mr. Logan who also met their deaths on the rails? Engineer John Dyday, who succeeded Wallace on Erie No. 5, was killed in Akron in a train wreck February 1st, 1900. Wallace's cousin James Logan, also an Erie engineer, died July 7th, 1900, when his freight train derailed in Martell, Ohio. Wallace's son Alexander was killed when he stepped in front of an Erie train January 11th, 1904 in Gallium. And cousin Roy Logan, an Erie engineer, died March 14th, 1907 in a freight wreck in Pennsylvania. So some of you may have heard about this phantom train happening at a very tall bridge in Medina County. That's Hollywood. This is the true location. This is the true documented location of the train wreck. But for some reason, because the bridge is much taller and much longer up in Medina County, it's matriculated up north to that area. For over a century, the legend of the phantom train has been told. And whether you're a skeptic or a believer, one thing is for certain. If you hear a whistle shriek on the old B&O rail line in Rittman, Ohio, you may not believe what you're about to see. Thanks for watching today, folks. If you'd be so kind to like and subscribe and leave a comment, I'd really appreciate it. And I'll see you next time when we explore more curious history. Take care.